Hey everyone, welcome to another session of Measurement Talks. Today I'm actually calling in from New York, and to kick us off, we
Getting ready for the Whaleys.
that's right, getting ready for the Whaleys this week. It's gonna be a blast. I'm gonna be a speaker, and I have no idea what questions are coming my way yet, but I know that I'll find out a couple minutes before the session. Just as there's a trend here, right, Rishabh?
There is.
There's
I've been. Hey, but you know what? This time you were told beforehand that you're going to be a speaker.
true,
So
very true.
this is a big improvement.
We're making steps. Yeah, we're getting better. Yeah, so yeah, excited to be in New York. It's always a blast being here. Staying in the Chelsea area, which is a blast. And then I've got to do my what Raba does, Raba Rahil, the Raba room rating. But so far, I'm giving the spot like a 8.5 out of 10. It's pretty nice. But to kick us off, we've got to talk about meta performance. So uh, Yarden over at Veros has was kind enough to share some data last week, and Taylor Holiday added some commentary to it. Overall, the general tweet was an analysis of 6,000 advertisers that use Veros, and basically they analyzed to understand the impact of performance between February 18th through March 20th, a period where there was a lot of volatility. People were saying that their performance was affected. So measuring that period versus the period before, in a nutshell, the sort of impact and effect is all over the place. You had about half advertisers that were not significantly affected, and then another half of advertisers that were affected. So it pretty much is a half and half. And then there was about a 13% subset of the people that were affected that were significantly affected. So all that to say, there is an impact. That said, there are some accounts that appear to be insulated from the impact, where their week over week performance didn't change too drastically. So I think this raises the question of like, what are the categories, the AOVs of these brands that were versus were not affected, as well as the account structure.
Do
From
you?
personal experience, cost caps for us has been a little bit more volatile, and it's been something that I've been trying to lean into. But as of a week and a half ago, I just shut them off completely, just because they weren't working. They weren't working for me.
You're
They
like
had a
you're
moment.
like you're like. Thank you, Taylor, but no, thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Honestly, I mean, look, I think when I first started testing them, they were definitely improving things, and they were like becoming top performers, and there were moments where it just stopped spending, and it was good. It was a nice supplemental. I'll always look at these tactics as supplemental to my business as usual, just to squeeze a little bit more efficiency on these odd days where maybe I don't have time to ride the wave. But they came with a lot of volatility as of late, and so I think they're on the docket to retest, but not in the near future, not for the next couple of days or weeks until we see some more consistency in the account.
Yeah, dude. I will tell you that across our customers, so now we're like, we work with over 100 people probably at this point, and so I would say that it is roughly similar to what Veros was seeing in terms of like the overall ratios, but
Hmm.
there was basically dependence on category. So it's you know, like health and wellness, for example, actually is not seeing as much volatilities. Now, CPAs in general in health and wellness are high, but in general it was like less volatile. And then other categories had higher like beauty, for example, for whatever reason, had high volatility. Uh, and I do think also it is almost certainly in part account structure, like what types of ads you're running, how you're running them, what algorithm you're asking Meta to use to bid.
Right.
And so I think, yeah, and like for better or for worse, this doesn't mean like, the person who has chosen a certain way of running the ad account has done a bad job. It's just like the underlying algorithm is going to affect different strategies differently and introduce more volatility in different strategies. And the big kerfuffle in my view is like, if you're the CMO, how do you explain to your CFO who now sees that, oh, but half of the people don't see any volatility. Like, is this you? Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, no, dude, like, hey, this is actually the best way for us to run ads. And it just happens to also be the most volatile. Like, it happens to be volatile, right? Like, how would you recommend having that conversation? Because that's like where sort of the rubber meets the road. It's like, look, this is true, but ultimately somebody's got to have a convo with somebody else.
So a couple of things that have been super instrumental to get more understanding about the volatility. We've there's two things actually. One is we have a daily tracker, and this daily tracker has all of our performance metrics all the way down to EBITDA. But there's a notes section where in the notes section, I'm literally adding all possible events. So like the eclipse, right? The eclipse was yesterday. It affected a good part of the country where everybody went outside. No one was looking on their phones. They were just looking up at the sky for a couple minutes. That could be disruptive. So note that down. Every time there's a meta bug or an issue, I note it down. And this just provides context so that we can see side by side. There's this meta bug, and here is performance. And then when we look at performance, there's three columns. We have the actual performance, we have performance versus the 7-day average percent change, and we have performance versus the previous same day. So Monday versus Monday of the previous week, Tuesday versus Tuesday of the previous week. And so this creates a great way to understand how performance trends, if it's like just a blink moment in time where we had a bad day, or if, you know what, Mondays are just horrible for us, and we actually see that this past Monday was aligned with the previous Mondays. So that report on its own, super valuable to add a lot of context so that they can see it in front of them and see like, okay, yeah, I'm tracking. There is this bug here. And then for about 2 weeks, measurable, we see that there's a direct impact, a stepwise change. The other thing that's been super instrumental too, and this is what's created a lot more empathy, there is, I think it's Barry Hot actually that created this, but there's a bot on X.
Yeah, it is very.
Okay, so that bot is incredible. You can subscribe to it, you get instant notifications. However, if you're on Slack and your CFO is in Slack, or your finance team or leadership team are in Slack, get them all in the same Slack channel, create a Slack channel if you'd like, dedicated to this, and then do an RSS subscription. I think it's just like /subscribe or something, and you copy and paste the URL of where that Twitter bot is extracting this data. So basically it's a feed. Every time there's a meta issue, it goes out to this RSS feed, and it sends an alert for the bot to send this automatic tweet, but then you can also have it send a direct Slack message. So if you've got the leadership team all in there, and by the way, these things are very frequent, let me tell you, I have a dedicated channel, and it's great to just scroll up and be like, wow, it's nearly every other day that there's an issue here. But when they start to see that and they see those pings and it's happening in real time, and they see the volume of them, I think it creates a lot of empathy where they start to realize, okay, yeah, like this platform does have a lot of issues and volatility. And it's great because you can sort by like ad delivery issues. And those are the most important for them to understand and get an understanding that the volatility that's being experienced could be having an effect on the ads. That on its own has been really helpful for us because initially they're not in the account every single day, right? So
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
having them see it, and get those notifications, I think it creates more of an understanding about what headwinds account managers are facing on Meta.
I love it, man. I mean, I think it's always true that visibility solves like 90% of the problem. And then the remainder of the 10 is like, you just add context or you add like a little bit more information on top of that visibility. And it's like, hey, this is just how we manage in these situations moving forward. You said Eclipse. And so I wanted to like just use that as a segue to ask you about the Warby Parker, like the sets of things Warby Parker is doing. I know you were like super excited about that. So you want to just like share a little bit about what Warby Parker did?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on my flight to New York yesterday. Unfortunately, I missed the eclipse. However, we worked sort of on this path, right? On the path of totality, going from Texas to New York. and the flight attendants passed out these glasses. And so what's really cool is that Warby Parker pretty much, I ended up Googling it, and Warby Parker ended up creating the ISO certified Eclipse glasses, the glasses that you needed to, be able to look up at the sky. And they basically did this campaign, right? And it makes sense. You've got a brand at Warby Parker that specializes in glasses, and a lot of people are going to need glasses on this day. So very intelligent of them to lean in and say, let's make these free glasses to generate awareness. People are going to be taking pictures. It's sort of a social media moment to get free distribution. Brilliant on its own. Now, I think where Warby Parker really shined is they took it a step further. And I don't know if they partner with other airlines. However, I checked the hashtags and it looks like it was just Delta, but they partnered up with Delta and created these glasses for Warby Parker X Delta for people that were on the flight, to be able to look out the plane and see the eclipse as well. That was super smart of them. There's a couple things there in terms of layers. One, partnering with a airline like Delta, which has a certain loyalty, attracts kind of business flyers, I think is brilliant, right? It shows that they found a little bit of an opportunity where other companies and competitors might be looking all the way over here and let's just make free glasses. But they're like, okay, well, how do we create lean into some white space and get in front of the type of customers that we want to attract as well. So I think, partnering up with Delta is brilliant versus another airline where maybe it's not their ideal customer or not their target customer. But yeah,
you should tell that to Rabah when you meet him. It's like, hey, Rabah, stop flying American. Otherwise, you're not going to get. Dude, man. I don't. I don't understand why he does it to himself. At some point, I'll ask him. But all I see is like half of his Twitter is like great, and then the other half is him complaining about how he got destroyed by American doing something to him again. So
I have those moments with United. I've and it sucks because I built up a lot of points and loyalty with United, but now I'm just like, I can't, you guys are just so inconsistent. You cancel all my flights, and I'm always having to scramble. Yeah, it's I haven't flown United in quite a long time, so it hasn't happened to me in a bit, but I've been flying Delta and American, and they've been a little bit more consistent. Yeah, United hasn't been kind to me, but we'll leave that aside.
Okay, all right, but they leaned in and found like a good ICP fit. Like Delta, I remember I used to be a Delta person when it had the right connections for me, and you're right, it is just nicer, like better customer service than the other airlines. It tends to be more business flyers. It tends to be people who want to pay a premium for experience, and so it's like a really good fit. Really good fit.
Yeah, and they customized their kit. Like they didn't just give out these glasses, but they customized the little box and the glasses itself to have both logos. And they added some verbiage in there to call out, so whatever altitude you'll have what you need to celebrate Great North American Solar Eclipse on April 8th. And then they added the @ for Warby Parker and Delta. So overall, just brilliant of them to lean in and lean into that partnership. And I think it raises the questions as brands is how do we find these unique opportunities where you're not they're less obvious. And I think those less obvious moments where you can create CPM arbitrage, because that's what this is. If you think about it, right? It's
totally
the free impressions on people on the flight. But then also you're creating this social media moment where people might be taking pictures, and if you're looking up at the sky and you've got the Warby Parker logo on these glasses, those are getting some distribution impressions as well. So how do we create these CPM opportunities even in a real life moment, which are less obvious, and create these shareable moments to again get free impressions? I think it's smart of them. Obviously, there's a cost to these glasses, but relative to what a meta ad costs, or to produce a creative in a video, making some paper glasses is probably fairly on the lower end of that cost. So
yeah, totally.
I liked it a lot. I think this is awesome. It creates a lot of, it inspires that creative thinking, and how do we replicate something like this? So
the other thing
partnership excited me.
Yeah, the other thing I really like is I like product-led growth where the product is not actually the core product. So my software analogy is HubSpot with Website Grader. So like for Warby Parker, it's these like, Eclipse glasses, but obviously you don't sell Eclipse glasses all year. Like they sell normal glasses, but they're giving you a taste of like who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And then HubSpot did the same thing with like websitegrader.com back in the day. So you would just like go and grade your website. And after that, you were like, okay, how do I then think about all the different things I need to do for better marketing by having a better site? And then it's like, I guess HubSpot can help me. And I think these types of like just next door to the core product-led growth motions are actually very interesting because you can give them a taste of the company without giving them the core product itself. So like, I'm trying to think of another good example here. Like the inverse of that is like, perfume companies like have forever just given away samples, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, here's a sample of the perfume. And so I think that is like, that's fine. But I actually think that you want to give away something that's auxiliary because then it actually adds to the overall value that you are generating for that consumer.
Yeah. I think another example for me would be Le Labo. The Le Labo fragrances, they've got body washes, lotions, bars of soap, and actual colognes and perfumes as well. In fact, I think that's where they started, and they went tangentially to body washes. Now they don't just do body washes; they actually do exclusive, made for body washes in partnership with different hotel chains. So I think it's the Fairmont. The Fairmont has a
Yeah.
specific Le Labo exclusive fragrance made just for them. Um, I had never tried. I heard of Le Labo, never tried it. I went to a Fairmont in San Francisco. I was like, I need body wash, so I used the body wash, and I was just like, oh my gosh, and absolutely infatuated by it. It was really great smelling body wash. It stayed on you. I didn't have to like put on cologne. It just had the natural sort of aroma from the body wash. And went to the store. I was like, hey, I want to buy this body wash. And it was at a hotel. And they're like, okay, which chain? And I'm like, Fairmont. And they're like, okay, it's this one. So they have a very specific fragrance for each hotel chain. And then they straight up told me like, okay, so it won't smell the exact same. It'll smell similar, but each chain has a unique formula specific to that chain. So great sort of experience in partnering up with a specific hotel chain, which certain guests stay at, attracts a certain customer that's within the price points that you're trying to acquire, and a great way to sample to then open that up from a body wash when you're taking a shower to the actual cologne and perfume. So I think another great example of thinking outside the box and creating sort of a real life experience for people to try and open up the doors for your products.
I totally agree. I mean, this is just a more fun story, but before we started the company, I used to like go, like we were like sort of coming up with ideas. I incubated it at the Greylock offices in San Francisco, and they have Byredo Vetiver hand wash. Have you ever tried Byredo?
I have not.
So it's like, I would say it's like in the category of like Aesop, basically.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit nicer, but most VC firms have Aesop in their bathrooms. This is like such a random fact, but in Greylock they had Byredo, and it's like everybody remembers that office because it's like, and they think about it as like the Greylock soap. And somehow it's like in this like it's such a micro community of people who have like happened to go and use the restroom there. But in this micro community of people, you have such a strong association of those two things together. It is like ridiculous. And so I think like it is not to be understated how much value can be had from like these very minor things, like appearingly very minor things, because people will just associate their like that moment in their life with your brand, which is like incredibly like you're going to associate the Eclipse day with Warby now. And it's like that is such a, I mean, like, yes, it's a good moment and things like that, but the association is so powerful. So anyway, I think like the compounding effects of this is like, is like very, very good. So
Absolutely. I mean, I think this is the type of brand marketing that brand should seek, right? Like for me, brand versus performance is always this discussion of like, one is here to limit the other and all this stuff. It's such a wrong way of looking at it. But I think like when brand initiatives align with these sort of efforts, um, to create a virality or a share or some sort of distribution or association, I think that's where the things like there's full alignment there between the performance and the brand teams, because obviously the performance teams will benefit from that. Like you're sort of priming future customers. Like me, when I tried on that body wash, I was like, all right, like I'm buying this, and it wasn't right away. It was like a month later. But had I not tried that and had a brand marketer not taken the risk to give away a bunch of free um, body washes to a chain of Fairmont hotels, I'm sure that's probably led to a lot of new customer and customer growth for that business.
Totally. I mean, our friends at I'll use this as a segue, but our friends at No Commerce would famously say, like, that's why you got to ask the question, where did you first hear about us?
Yeah.
It's like performance and attribution are going to tell you one set of things, but using survey information is going to tell you a totally different set of things in terms of like how you measure the impact of the different activities that you have. So I wanted to use that as a way to just start our next segment on our evergreen topic in terms of using survey information for how to like better run how you think about marketing. And I was curious about two things. One is the post-purchase one, right? Like what types of questions do you ask? How do you think about what are the right questions to ask? But the second one that I think is like less discussed is surveying people who are not your customers and what types of insights might you derive by doing that. But what do you currently do at Nude, and what are some of the insights that you think are more broadly applicable from how you run your post-purchase survey?
Yeah, so we definitely ask that question. How did you first hear about us? And that's kind of an evergreen. It's the first question we ask. It doesn't change, right? Like percent doesn't change much, but it is instrumental with new initiatives. So when we started launching and scaling TikTok, I wanted to see that this, the response as a percent would increase over time, just to validate what I was seeing in my attribution and analytics tools. When we do influencers or celebrities or personalities, partnerships, like we track that as well. So that one's instrumental for us, and just seeing how it changes over time. The other question I like to ask is, how long did you know about us before placing your first order? So Google
Oh,
Analytics
wow.
and
Good
different,
question.
different analytics tools will like do this time lag analysis, but I find that it's not very accurate. And so this is really cool because it does give you a scope of how how long it takes for people to consider your product. And if you work with a partner like No Commerce or a Fairing, you should be able to segment. So people that choose, how did you first hear about us, say TikTok, and then you're able to then drill down and pivot into uh, how long did you know about it? How long did you first did you know about us before making that first purchase for TikTok specifically versus YouTube versus those influencers? You can then get a scope of like what is the time to purchase
Got it.
across different
Yep.
channels, to then give yourself like opportunity to be patient enough, or to say, you know what, I can make a faster decision because people make a buying decision within 5 days, for example. So those two questions together, I think, are instrumental. On their own, they're helpful, but when you are able to stack them and interlay them together, it does give you so much more analytics and insight on how you should think about different channels as well, and the consideration period of those channels. The
What
other
is the
stuff,
what is like what is a surprising insight that you have gotten? So one thing for people who may not know, cookies have expiration windows. And so oftentimes when you're like looking just at your like cookie based data on attribution, you
Mhm.
can actually be misguided by how long your consideration cycle is if all you're doing is like trying to understand when is the first time you saw somebody and when did they make the purchase, because it's going to be like cut. And so it's like it's always going to look shorter than reality.
Yeah,
But like when you what are some of the insights that you have found that are surprising on that like consideration cycle question? And
yeah.
specifically, what do you do when if you see a cohort that has like massively long consideration cycles?
Yeah, the great questions. So, you can use GA4, for example, to have a similar report by source medium. I think it's a funnel breakdown. So you go to the Explorer tab, you do a funnel breakdown, and then there's a window, or there's a little, you create your funnel like first purchase, first visit, add to cart, purchase. There's a setting, it's a toggle, which shows like show time lapse, I think. And then you can filter by source medium and you can see it. Every time I do through GA4 or another tool, it's always like, oh, like 3 days. Meta, from first visit to purchase, it's 3 days. And
Exactly.
I'm like, this is
Exactly.
this okay. Then you do the post purchase. 26% of people have known us for more than 6 months.
Exactly.
So, it's like, oh, like, okay. The ads from 6 months ago, right? Because that's how people first heard about us, and it took more than 6 months. The ads from 6 months ago are what's driving the sales today for a quarter of our customers. That's insane. It's insanely high number. So I think this is much more valuable than GA4. GA4 maybe using it directionally could be good, but yeah, I was blown away by the amount of people that have known about this brand, about us for more than 6 months. That's awesome. Um, what do you do when you have a like a long consideration period? I think sets you up it sets up the requirement to tolerate more pain, if that makes sense. So when you're testing a new channel and you're not seeing the results right away, like it can create pain. It can create this sort of uncomfortable discussion with finance of like,
Totally.
we need to cut this channel off, or we need to cut back on spend. I mean, that's a discussion that's popped up many times for us internally. It's, hey, we need to cut back ad spend. And this data has actually been helpful to go to finance and say, look, when we cut back ad spend, we're not hurt. It's a short-term gain and long-term pain. We are not like, we're spending today to drive the customers of tomorrow. And so sharing that data has been instrumental. But yeah, when you have a channel that's got a long consideration period, I think it opens up the discussion to one, understanding that, okay, this channel really takes about a month for people to lean in. So like testing YouTube, for example, or even Pinterest. Pinterest has a high consideration period as well. I think you kind of just have to outline the test and outline how much budget and how much time is necessary to properly measure the channel. And then once you get past this sort of initial moment, you have the momentum and the inertia from previous ad spend to lean forward, right? So if you're spending $5,000 a day on Pinterest and it takes your Pinterest users about 30 days to purchase, you know that the ad spend from 30 days ago are now sort of converting and populating today to help offset the spend that you have going on today. So that's the biggest thing, is just designing a way of properly measuring and then having confidence in the channel to keep it on long enough. If you're going to end up turning it off, or if the team or your brand doesn't have the resistance to tolerate that much pain for that long amount of time, say it's 30 days or 90 days, then you're better off just not testing the channel and waiting until you can tolerate that pain to properly test it, or else you're going to get misleading results. Or you're gonna have to like test it for a little bit, turn it off, and then wait for the data to mature, and then go back and say, okay, look, this data shows that we do get acquisition or drive acquisition from this channel. It just takes a lot longer than we're used to.
Yeah, the other thing it's making me think, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, is it's got to be super interesting to see how those responses change in
Yeah,
sale moments and seasonally. So again, this is like a naive hypothesis and you don't need to share, but for a brand like Nude, I would assume that like actually if you were to look right before summer, you would probably see higher consideration cycles, or in moments of sales, you would see higher consideration cycles, because it's like people who have been waiting for something that to trigger the purchase,
yeah,
like you give them a reason to now make that purchase. And it's like, hey, look, like we are actually capturing demand today from like this longer period of time. And so like that can now factor into your like campaigning strategies, right? For like when are moments for like demand creation and when are moments for demand capture, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, that's exactly, it's spot on. I think this is universal across most brands that have peak Q4 periods or holiday periods. But yeah, like for the majority of brands, August through October are pretty much building up the demand for holiday. And I think running these sort of questions, you can analyze, those periods and then sort of triangulate back to know when did we have these effective campaigns that drove these sales for Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And to your point, it's you can then use that to tactfully build strategic campaigns around that, knowing that, okay, this isn't meant to drive a sale right now, but it's to
Exactly.
start priming people and getting them ready, knowing that they're going to convert on Black Friday. So yeah, I think that's a very tactical and smart way of looking at it. And then setting that expectation with that budget, right? It's not going to be 100% of your spend, but say, okay, we're going to invest $100,000 in August or September, and that $100,000 is really just a long-term ROI. We won't see the ROI on this until the end of the quarter.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Okay, what about non-customer surveying? Like,
yeah,
I'll share a little bit. I mean, I'm going to use a little bit of SaaS also, just to like, yeah. So we actually we do a ton of non-customer surveying for all of our like, because we build like landing experiences or like store builds, and so one of our strategies actually that is very effective is we will actually just to a random group of people, we will actually show, it's like more like user testing, but we will show like how we are building this type of landing experience and then just see what they do. So we have all of the instrumented data from like brands who we work with, and we can see all of the user behavior patterns and things like that. But for new concepts, like, we have this belief at the company where it's like you can't just do everything by A/B testing. You got to take big swings.
hmm
And so for new concepts, we will just like put it to like non-live things and then see how people interact with it and then ask them a bunch of questions. And by purposely doing it to like non-existing customers or to not live experiences, it actually gives us a totally different insight, which is very valuable. And I would bet that like the same thing is true for actual ecom brands where you can like ask questions of people or show them something and ask questions of them for people who have never interacted with you. I mean, who knows if they've interacted with you, but like who have not bought from you at a minimum.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't remember where this was brought up, but it's a salient point that stuck with me. When we work on a brand or any business, whether it's SaaS, and I actually have examples of this happening in my previous roles as well. But like we're in it, we're in the like we are breathing, we're living it, we're looking at this thing every single day. In our vocabulary, our perspective, the way we talk about the product or offering or solution is very different than how consumers actually perceive it. And so I think you can definitely ask your customers, but you're already acquiring those people, right? So I think asking the people that haven't bought yet or your non-customers and doing that through tools like SurveyMonkey. And I was trying to pull up the other one. There's another tool that I found recently that is really promising. I want to try out, but asking cohorts of customers, different groups, strategic groups, and basically putting the product in front of them and asking them questions like what features are most important to you, what would be holding you back from buying this right now, what are you looking to solve from this product, like what would you expect to get out of this product, and just understanding how they're thinking about it, how do they interpret your features, and how does that interpretation fuel solutions in their life, using that data to then go and build landing pages and offers and new ad angles and putting that into the market and see if you can now like acquire customers. I think that's so it's not done enough, or maybe where no one is talking about it, but high alpha opportunity, right? Like
Totally.
especially with tools like SurveyMonkey, where you can create these cohorts. So you can go target people that are parents. You can go target general consumers. You can go target people that love to meal plan, frequent flyers, right? Like Delta could have probably jumped on, or sorry, Warby Parker could have jumped on SurveyMonkey and been like, let's pull all of the people that are frequent flyers and figure out what airlines they fly in, and whether or not they're Warby Parker customers, or if they've considered Warby Parker. They could have done a lot of market research to then lead into that initiative and say, you know what, Delta is the airline that we're going to go with, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to put forward the sunglasses, or the Eclipse glasses. So yeah, I highly underutilized tactic, and it's super beneficial to create that white space, understand where the white space is in the market, and then talk about your products in the way that consumers perceive them, right? And not get all fancy with different jargon and going into the ingredients and we have this and that, the other, but just going straight into it with how consumers think about the product and solution.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I love it. I'm such a big advocate of like gathering the data in this way. But dude, this was killer. I mean, such a tactical episode. Let's drop it on this. And
Yeah.
we will see you all on the next one.